Getting beyond our body, our environment, and time isn't easy. But it's worth it, because once we disconnect from three-dimensional reality, we enter a whole other reality called the quantum, the realm of infinite possibility. Describing this reality is a bit challenging because it's unlike anything we are familiar with in the physical universe. The rules of Newtonian physics, the way we are used to thinking the world works, simply don't apply. The quantum, or unified field, is an invisible field of energy and information, or you could say a field of intelligence or consciousness, that exists beyond space and time. Nothing physical or material exists there. It's beyond anything you can perceive with your senses. This unified field of energy and information is what governs all the laws of nature. Scientists have been working to quantify this process so we can more fully understand it, and they are discovering more and more all the time. Based on my knowledge and experience, I believe there's a self-organizing intelligence that is energy, and it is observing all of the universes and galaxies into order. Sometimes people will say to me that this idea seems a bit unscientific. I always answer them with the same question. What happens after an explosion, order or disorder? Their answer is always that disorder results. Then I ask, so why after the Big Bang, which was the biggest explosion ever, has so much order been created? Some intelligence must be organizing its energy and matter into form and unifying all the forces of nature to create such a masterpiece. That intelligence, that energy, is the quantum, or unified field. To give you some idea of what this field is like, imagine taking away all the people and bodies on Earth, all the animals and plants and physical objects, both natural and man-made, all the continents, the oceans, and even the Earth itself. Imagine you could then take away all the planets and moons and stars in our solar system, including our sun, and then imagine taking away all the other solar systems in our galaxy, and then all the galaxies in the universe. There's no air, and there isn't even any light that you can see with your eyes. There's just absolute blackness, the void, the zero-point field. It's important to remember this because when you, as a consciousness in the present moment, unfold into the unified field, you will be in an infinite black space, void of anything physical. Now imagine that not only do you not see anything here, but because you enter into this realm without a physical body, you also have no sight with which to see, nor do you have the capacity to hear, feel, smell, or taste. You have no senses here at all. The only way you can exist in the quantum is as an awareness. Or better said, the only way you can experience this realm is with your awareness, not your senses. And since consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention and noticing, once you are beyond the world of the senses, when you pay attention to the energy of the quantum field, your consciousness is connecting to greater levels of frequency and information. Yet, as strange as this may sound, the quantum field is not empty. It's an infinite field filled with frequency or energy, and all frequency carries information. So think of the quantum field as being filled with infinite amounts of energy vibrating beyond the physical world of matter and beyond our senses, invisible waves of energy available for us to use in creation. What exactly can we create with all this energy swimming in an infinite sea of potentials? That's up to us because, in short, the quantum field is the state in which all possibilities exist. And as I just said, when we find ourselves in the quantum universe, we exist simply as an awareness or as a consciousness, specifically an awareness that is paying attention to or observing a field of infinite possibilities existing within an even greater consciousness and a greater level of energy. As you enter this endless, vast space as an awareness, there are no bodies, no people, no objects, no places, and no time. Instead, infinite unknown possibilities exist as energy. So if you find yourself thinking about knowns in your life, you are back in the three-dimensional reality of space and time. But if you can stay in the blackness of the unknown for long enough, it will prepare you to create unknowns in your life. In the previous video, when I was instructing you to return to the present moment, I was referring to you stopping yourself from thinking about the predictable future, or from remembering the familiar past and simply unfolding into this eternal vast space as an awareness, to no longer place your attention on anything or anyone material in this three-dimensional reality, like your body, the people in your life, the things you own, the places you go, and time itself. If you do that properly, you are nothing but awareness. That's how you get there. Now let's back up a bit and look at how scientists came to discover the quantum universe, which happened when they began studying the subatomic world. They found that atoms, the building blocks of everything in the physical universe, are made up of a nucleus surrounded by a large field containing one or more electrons. This field is so large in comparison with the tiny electrons that it appears to be 99.99% empty space. But as you just read, the space isn't actually empty. It's made up of a vast array of energetic frequencies that make up an invisible, interconnected field of information. So everything in our known universe, although it may appear to be solid, is actually 99.99% energy or information. In fact, most of the universe is made up of this empty space. Matter is an infinitesimally small component in relation to the immense space of nothing physical. Researchers soon discovered that the electrons that move around in that vast field behave in a completely unpredictable manner. They don't appear to be subject to the same laws that govern matter in our larger universe. They're here in one moment and then gone the next. And it's impossible to predict where and when the electrons will appear. That's because, as the researchers eventually discovered, the electrons exist simultaneously in an infinite number of possibilities or probabilities. It is only when an observer focuses his or her attention and looks for some thing material that the invisible field of energy and information collapses into a particle we know as the electron. That is called collapsing the wave function, or a quantum event. But as soon as the observer looks away, no longer observing the electron and taking his or her mind off the subatomic matter, it disappears back into energy. In other words, that particle of physical matter, the electron, can't exist until we observe it, give it our attention. And the moment we're no longer putting our attention on it, it turns back into energy, specifically an energetic frequency, which scientists call a wave, and into possibility. In this way, mind and matter are related in the quantum. By the way, just as we, as a subjective consciousness, are observing the electron into form, there's an objective universal consciousness that is constantly observing all of us and our three-dimensional reality into order and form as well. So what that means for you is this. If you're viewing your life from the same level of mind every single day, anticipating a future based on your past, you are collapsing infinite fields of energy into the same patterns of information called your life. For example, if you wake up and you think, "Where's my pain?" your familiar pain soon appears because you expected it to be there. Imagine what would happen instead if you were able to take your attention off the physical world and the environment. As you learned in the last video, when you take your attention off your body, you become no body, and you no longer have access to or any use for the senses. When you take your attention off the people in your life, you become no one. And so you no longer have an identity as a parent, a partner, a sibling, a friend, or even as a member of a profession, a religious group, a political party, or a nationality. You have no race, no gender, no sexual orientation, and no age. When you take your attention off objects and places in the physical environment, you are in no thing and nowhere. Finally, if you take your attention off linear time, which has a past and a future, you are in no time. You are in the present moment in which all possibilities in the quantum field exist. Because you are no longer identifying with or connected to the physical world, you are no longer trying to affect matter with matter. You are beyond matter and beyond how you identify yourself as a body in space and time. In a very real sense, you are in the immense blackness of the unified field, where nothing material exists. That's the direct effect of continuously laboring to get to the present moment that I described in the previous video. The moment that happens, you unfold your attention and energy into an unknown field beyond matter, where all possibilities exist, a field made up of nothing but invisible frequencies carrying information or consciousness. And just like the quantum scientists who took their attention off the electron only to find that it reverted to energy and possibility, if you were to take your attention off your life or get beyond the memory of your life should turn into possibility. After all, if you focus on the known, you get the known. If you focus on the unknown, you create a possibility. The longer you can linger in that field of infinite possibilities as an awareness, aware that you are aware in this endless black space without putting your attention on your body, on things, or on people, places, and time, the longer you invest your energy into the unknown, the more you are going to create a new experience or new possibilities in your life. It's the law.
We've been primed over time from thousands of years that the unknown is a scary place. And so then, by thinking the same thoughts, by making the same choices, by doing the same things that create the same experiences, that produce the same feelings and emotions in time, and those emotions begin to influence your very same thoughts, causes our biology to stay exactly the same. And so we afford people new information, new knowledge, new understandings, new philosophy, new theory. And we inspire them to make new choices, to begin to do new things and break the old habit and relearn, to create new experiences and produce new emotions. And in just a matter of 4 days, people begin to upregulate genes that begin to heal their body and change the way their body functions, just by changing the way they think, changing the way they act, and changing the way they feel. The problem is that the brain and body locked into the past, clinging to the known and familiar, where the body has been conditioned to be the mind. The moment a person decides to do something differently or make a different choice, they feel uncomfortable because they've left the known and they've left the familiar. And if the body has been conditioned to be the mind, the animal, the servant, is now the master. And it wants to return back to familiar territory. And as we step out into the unknown and we feel that discomfort, the uncertainty, not being able to predict the next moment, the body begins to influence the mind, and we start to hear the same thoughts. And if we respond to that thought that's hardwired in the brain, and we accept it, we believe it, we surrender to it without saying, is this the truth? That same thought leads to the same choice, which leads to the same behavior, which creates the same experience and produces the same feeling and the same emotion. And the person says, this feels right to me. But all it is that it feels familiar. And so the process of change then is to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. And the more conscious you become of your unconscious thoughts, the less you will go unconscious to them in your waking day.
The element of consciousness is the intelligent awareness within us that gives us life every day. Let's term this objective consciousness or the subconsciousness. This is a system of awareness separate from the conscious mind. It is subconscious, but it is incredibly intelligent and mindful. It is also separate from the thinking brain, but it operates via the other parts of the brain to keep our body in order. With objective consciousness running the show, the brain processes millions of automatic functions every second on a cellular level and at an aggregate level as well, of which we are not consciously aware. These are the aspects of our health and life that we take for granted every day, the systems that control our heart, digest our food, filter our blood, regenerate cells, and even organize our DNA. It takes a great and unlimited consciousness to be responsible for all these functions. This objective intelligence knows so much more than what our personality self knows, even though we think we know it all. This is a universal, fundamental aspect of every human being, independent of age, gender, education, religion, social status, or culture. Few ever stop to acknowledge its power, will, and intelligence. In fact, this aspect of consciousness is what gives life to all things. It is a real intelligence with quantifiable energy or force that is innate to all things. It is objective and constant. It has been called zero-point field, the source, and universal intelligence. It is the source that collapses the quantum field into all physical form. Literally, it is the life force. Quantum physics is just beginning to measure this field of potentials. As human beings, we possess both elements of consciousness. We are consciously aware as a subjective consciousness, and we exist because we are connected to the force of life that is an objective consciousness. We have free will to choose the quality of life we desire, and at the same time, a greater intelligence is giving and allowing us the animation of life in every second. In fact, science now understands that everything physical, including you and me, is just the tip of an immense iceberg. The question is, what is the field that holds it all together, and how do we make contact with it? The brain has the equipment, so to speak, to facilitate both these levels of consciousness. The brain without consciousness is inert and lifeless. When consciousness is facilitated through the human brain, the end result is called mind. Mind is a working brain, a brain in action. Mind comes into being when an operating brain is animated with life. There is no mind without the physical expression of life through a functioning brain. Mind, then, is the product of consciousness manipulating the subtle and diverse neural tissues of the brain. Since both of these specific levels of consciousness animate the brain to create mind, we must possess two different arrangements at work in the brain. We have conscious mind and subconscious mind embroidered in two diverse brain systems. Accordingly, the brain has two distinct, generalized systems with appropriate hardware to facilitate two types of consciousness. Our conscious awareness is based in the neocortex. The crown of our brain, the neocortex, is the seat of free will. This is the conscious thought center of the brain, where everything an individual learns and experiences is recorded, and where information is processed. The arrangement of how brain cells are connected together in the neocortex distinguishes you from other individuals and makes you unique. You have the ability to be consciously aware of yourself, your actions, your thoughts, your behavior, your feelings, your environment, and your mind, and to express thoughts and ideas. The invisible qualities of self-reflection, self-contemplation, and self-observation define your subjective experience of self. When we speak in terms of a person losing consciousness or regaining consciousness, we mean that he or she is leaving or returning to a level of being, self-aware, awake, and possessing a conceptual memory of self. All this is managed by the neocortex, the new brain.
If you're living in stress and you're living in survival, and that system is switched on, then everything will be a threat. Everything will be a danger. Everything will be a reason to rush, to be impatient, to be frustrated, to be judgmental, because that's the consciousness, that's the emotion we're living by. So now you have a problem with a coworker, you have a problem with your partner, whatever it is that you use as an example, and you have to give a presentation. Now you really have one of two choices. Either be victimized by those conditions in your life and you stay in that emotional state, and I'll say to you, Jay, why are you that way? Well, I'm this way because of this person, this circumstance. The person or circumstance is controlling the way I feel and the way I think. Anything that controls the way I feel and the way I think, I'm victim to, right? Okay. Or I actually can be a creator now. Okay, so when it's the hardest, it matters the most. Okay, so there's going to be a story, a valid story that's going to go along with those emotions that you're going to have to give up, that you can address at another time from a different state. If you're altered in that state and you say something, you do something, you write the email, you send the text, you'll always regret it. You'll always say, I should have never said that. I should have never done that. We got to learn that we're in an altered state at that time. So there's only one of two choices. You either stay there the whole day and tell everybody that story, or you say, okay, let me take a moment. Remember that this is the experiment called life. Okay, let me practice getting relaxed in my heart. Let me slow the animal down. Let me practice. I'll take a few minutes. Now, let me breathe. Let me get my state back. Let me change everything. Okay, let me remember who I am, who I want to be when I open my eyes, and let me practice that again. Now, even if you had to do that 10 times in one day, I would say it was a day worth living. I would say it was a day worth living. And when we do walking meditations, in our retreats, we're doing walking meditations so you can practice doing it with your eyes open.
Yes.
Like if you're going to be relaxed in your heart and awake in your brain, and you can do it with your eyes closed, okay, let's take it out for a test drive. Yeah. Let me open my eyes. Let me pay a little bit more attention to my inner world. Let me practice feeling this feeling. Let me practice feeling this way, and let my brain do what it does. Let me let me change my physiology. Let me change my state. Let me walk as the healed person. Let me walk as the abundant person. Let me walk as if my prayers are answered. Let me walk in this state. If I keep practicing that over and over, it's going to become a habit, right?
Yeah.
So we hit it as many ways as we can. We have at least 7 or 8 different breaths that we do because we see how they all work in the brain. We have all kinds of meditations. We have sitting meditations. We have standing and walking meditations. We have laying down meditations because we want you to be able to do it with your eyes open, with your eyes closed, standing, walking, any way you can so that you don't default and return back to that person. Now, if you do default, you didn't fail. That's a program. You just went unconscious. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change. No one cares how many times you fell off the bicycle. If you ride the bicycle now, you ride the bike. So it's the constant process every single day. And I think that sometimes we look for evidence in our life and it hasn't happened. And I think it's so important that we still show up. Yeah, because that's where you're changing the most. And when you get to that point where you could care less if it happens or not, because you feel so happy, so grateful for who you are, get ready because your life is going to begin to change in magical ways.
Let's talk a bit more about the conscious and subconscious aspects of mind. Conscious mind affords us the ability to process conscious thoughts and information. This mind is self-knowledgeable, self-conceptual, self-realizing, and self-perceiving. It is what we refer to as the self, the you. Using its free will, the conscious part of us can place its attention on any one thing. This is the privilege of being human. In the chiropractic science and philosophy, it is called the educated mind, and it is processed in our newest brain region, the neocortex. The brain is the organ with the greatest number of neurons organized together. Where there is the greatest number of neurons, there are the greatest levels of intelligence. Consciousness uses the brain to mindfully process learning and experiences into electrochemical impulses called thoughts. The mind, then, is the product of the brain in action. The mind operates when the brain is alive and facilitating consciousness. Consciousness has 2 specific qualities. Objective consciousness is the life force, the source and the 0-point field. You and I are connected to that field, which affords us life through the midbrain, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. This is the subconscious mind. Subjective consciousness, situated in the neocortex, is the explorer, the identity that learns and evolves its understandings for a greater expression of life. This is the conscious mind. Once we understand how the brain works to create mind, we can go beyond the comfortable boundaries of what we already know. When we can unite our conscious mind to that infinite mind with unlimited potential, we will have access to a world of new possibilities. Consciousness is the only element that makes sense of how we can change the brain and mind. It is that intangible aspect of ourself that influences the brain to produce mind. The time that we are truly conscious, attentive, aware, and present is when we change how the brain works to create a new level of mind. When we can use the conscious mind together with the subconscious mind, we will be able to modify our hardware and upgrade our operating systems. At that moment of merging consciousness, the brain can be rewired.
So the idea is, if you can change the way you think and change the way you feel, could you begin to produce outcomes or effects in your life that cause you to believe that you're the creator of your life instead of the victim of your life, which means then you would have to think greater than that circumstance, and you would have to feel differently in the presence of that circumstance. And if you truly could, and begin to create an outcome, the synchronicity, the serendipity, the coincidence that happens in your life, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to realize that on some level you had a hand in that, that you were a participant in that. Our interest is to teach people how to reverse that process. Every person, every circumstance, every condition, every place, every object that you own is mapped neurologically in your brain. So your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact, a repository of everything you've learned intellectually or experienced. End products of experience are called emotions. The memories that we have in our life produces familiar emotions, or our response to anybody that we know in our life. There's a neurological network for your boss, for your coworker, for your ex. And for most people, their interaction in the environment is causing their environment to control their thinking, or their personal reality is controlling their personality. So our interest is if your personality is made of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, is it possible if I begin to change the way I think, change the way I act, and change the way I feel, should my life change? Because I'm changing. And so the interest for us then is to be able to meet the challenges and conditions in our life from a greater level of consciousness, and not be victimized by those circumstances, but to take time and to review how you're going to think, how you're going to act, and how you're going to feel. That's meditation. And review how you're not going to think, how you're not going to act, and how you're not going to feel. It just turns out that tends to be 95% of who we are, is those unconscious programs. So it's so much easier to forget than to remember, because it's the majority of who we are, after a certain point in our life. So changing that process, the overcoming process of that same self, somehow begins to produce effects in people's lives. And that's kind of the exciting part about being a creator of your life.
If you want to experience the supernatural in your own life by healing your body, creating new opportunities you could never have imagined before, and having transcendent, mystical experiences, you first need to master the concept of the present moment, the eternal now. There's a lot of talk about being present or being in the now these days. While most people understand the basics of what that means, not to think about the future or live in the past, I want to offer you a completely different understanding of the concept. It's going to require that you get beyond the physical world, including your body, your identity, and your environment, and even beyond time itself. This is where you turn possibility into reality. After all, if you don't get beyond who you think you are and the way you've been conditioned to believe the world works, it's not possible to create a new life or a new destiny. So in a very real sense, you have to get out of your own way, transcend the memory of yourself as an identity, and allow something greater than you, something mystical, to take over. First, let's take a look at how the brain functions. When any neurological tissue in the brain or the body is activated, it creates mind. Consequently, from a neuroscientific understanding, mind is the brain in action. For instance, you have a specific mind to drive your car. You have another mind to take a shower. You have a different mind when you sing a song or listen to music. You use a specific level of mind to execute each of those complex functions because you've probably done each of these tasks thousands of times. So your brain turns on in a very specific way whenever you do any of them. When your brain is in action, as you drive your car, for example, you are in fact turning on a specific sequence, pattern, and combination of neurological networks. Those neural networks, or neural nets, are simply clusters of neurons that work together as a community, just like an automatic software program or a macro, because you've done that particular action so many times. In other words, the neurons that fire together to accomplish the task become more wired together. As you consciously choose to perform the task of driving your vehicle, we could say that you are automatically selecting and instructing those neurons in your brain to turn on to create a level of mind. For the most part, your brain is a product of the past. It has been shaped and molded to become a living record of everything you have learned and experienced up to this point in your life. Learning, from a neuroscientific standpoint, is when neurons in your brain assemble to form thousands of synaptic connections, and those connections then assemble into complex three-dimensional neurological networks. Think of learning as your brain getting an upgrade. When you pay attention to knowledge or information and it makes sense to you, this interaction with the environment leaves biological impressions in your brain. When you experience something new, your senses write the story neurologically in your brain, and even more neurons come together to make even more enriched connections, upgrading your brain even further. Experiences not only enhance the brain circuitry, but they also create emotions. Think of emotions as the chemical residue from past experiences, or chemical feedback. The stronger the emotional quotient from an event in your life, the more the experience leaves a lasting impression in your brain. That's how long-term memories are formed. So if learning means making new connections in your brain, memories are when you maintain those connections. The more you repeat a thought, choice, behavior, experience, or emotion, the more those neurons fire and wire together, and the more they will sustain a long-term relationship. Most of your experiences come from your interaction with your external environment. Since your senses plug you into the external environment and neurologically record the narrative in your brain, when you experience a highly charged emotional event, bad or good, that moment becomes embossed neurologically in your brain as a memory. Therefore, when an experience changes how you normally feel chemically and heightens your attention to what caused it, you will associate a specific person or thing with where your body is at a particular time and place. That's how you create memories, by interacting with the outer world. It's safe to say that the only place the past actually exists is in your brain and in your body. How your past becomes your future. Let's take a closer look at what happens biochemically inside your body when you think a thought or feel an emotion. When you think a thought or have a memory, a biochemical reaction begins in your brain, causing the brain to release certain chemical signals. That's how immaterial thoughts literally become matter. They become chemical messengers. These chemical signals make your body feel exactly the way you were just thinking. Once you notice you are feeling a particular way, then you generate more thoughts equal to how you're feeling. And then you release more chemicals from your brain to make you feel the way you've been thinking. For example, if you have a fearful thought, you start to feel fear. The moment you feel fear, that emotion influences you to think more fearful thoughts. And those thoughts trigger the release of even more chemicals in the brain and body that make you continue to feel more fear. The next thing you know, you get caught in a loop where your thinking creates feeling and your feeling creates thinking. If thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain and feelings are the vocabulary of the body, and the cycle of how you think and feel becomes your state of being, then your entire state of being is in the past. When you fire and wire the same circuits in your brain over and over again because you keep thinking the same thoughts, you are hardwiring your brain into the same patterns. As a result, your brain becomes an artifact of your past thinking, and in time it becomes easier to automatically think in the same ways. At the same time, as you repeatedly feel the same emotions over and over again, since, as I just said, emotions are the vocabulary of the body and the chemical residue of past experiences, you are conditioning your body into the past. So now let's look at what that means for you on a day-to-day basis. Given what you just learned about feelings and emotions being the chemical end products of past events, the moment you wake up in the morning and search for the familiar feeling called you are starting your day in the past. So when you start to think about your problems, those problems, which are connected to the memories of past experiences of different people or things at certain times and places, create familiar feelings such as unhappiness, futility, sadness, pain, grief, anxiety, worry, frustration, unworthiness, or guilt. If those emotions are driving your thoughts and you cannot think greater than how you feel, then you are also thinking in the past. And if those familiar emotions influence the choices you are going to make that day, the behaviors you're going to exhibit, or the experiences you are going to create for yourself, then you're going to appear predictable and your life is going to stay the same. Now let's say after you wake up, you turn off your alarm, and as you lie there in bed, you check your Facebook, your Instagram, your WhatsApp, your Twitter, your texts, your emails, and then the news. Now you are really remembering who you are as you reaffirm your personality and connect to your past, present, personal reality. Then you go to the bathroom. You use the toilet, brush your teeth, take a shower, get dressed, and then head for the kitchen. You drink some coffee and eat breakfast. Maybe you watch the news or check your email again. It's the same routine you follow every day. Then you drive to work using the same old route, and when you get there, you interact with the same coworkers you saw the day before. You spend your day performing pretty much the same duties you performed yesterday. You might even react to the same challenges at work with the same emotions. Then after work, you drive home. Maybe you stop at the same grocery store and buy the food you like and always eat. You cook the same food for dinner and watch the same television show at the same time while sitting in the same place in your living room. Then you get ready for bed in the same way you always do. You brush your teeth with your right hand starting from the upper right side of your mouth. You crawl into the same side of the bed. Maybe you read a little, and then you go to sleep. If you keep doing these same routines over and over again, they will become a habit. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that you acquire through frequent repetition. Basically, it means your body is now on autopilot, running a series of programs, and over time, your body becomes the mind. You've done this routine so many times that your body automatically knows how to do certain things better than your brain or conscious mind. You just switch on the autopilot and go unconscious, which means you'll wake up the next morning and essentially do the same things all over again. In a very real sense, your body is dragging you into the same predictable future based on what you have been repeatedly doing in the same familiar past. You will think the same thoughts and then make the same choices that lead to the same behaviors that create the same experiences that produce the same emotions. Over time, you've created a set of hardwired neurological networks in the brain, and you have emotionally conditioned your body to live in the past. And that past becomes your future. If you were looking at a timeline of your day, starting with waking up in the morning and continuing until you go to bed that night, you could pick up that timeline of yesterday or today, your past, and place it in the space reserved for tomorrow, the future, because essentially the same actions you took today are the ones you are going to take tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Let's face it, if you keep the same routine as yesterday, it makes sense that your tomorrow is going to be a lot like your yesterday. Your future is just a rerun of your past. That's because your yesterday is creating your tomorrow. We could say that your mind and body are in the known, the same predictable future based on what you did in the same familiar past. And in that known, certain future, there's no room for the unknown. In fact, if something new happened, if something unknown were to unfold in your life at that moment to change the same predictable timeline of your day, you'd probably be annoyed at the disruption of your routine. You'd likely consider it troublesome, problematic, and downright inconvenient. You might say, "Can you come back tomorrow? This is not the right time." A habit is a redundant set of automatic unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that develop through repetition. It's when you've done something so many times that your body is programmed to become the mind. Over time, your body is dragging you to a predictable future based on what you've been doing in the past. Therefore, if you're not in the present moment, you're probably in a program. The fact is, there's no room for the unknown in a predictable life. But being predictable is not how the unknown works. The unknown is unfamiliar, uncertain, but it's also exciting because it occurs in ways you cannot expect or anticipate. So let me ask you, how much room in your routine, predictable life do you have for the unknown by staying in the known, following the same sequence each day of thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same programmed habits, recreating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns to reaffirm the same familiar feeling called you? You are repeating the same level of mind over and over again. In time, your brain becomes automatically programmed to do any one of those particular sequences more easily and effortlessly the next time, and then the next time, and so on. As each of these individual steps merge into one complete step, thinking a familiar thought of an experience of somebody or something at some place in some time will automatically create the anticipation of the feeling of the experience. If you can predict the feeling of any experience, you are still in the known. For instance, the thought of having a meeting with the same team of people you have worked with for years can automatically cause you to call up the emotion of what that future event will feel like. When you can predict the feeling of that future event because you've had enough past experiences to make it known to you, you are probably going to be creating more of the same. And of course, you are right. But that's because you are the same. By the same means, if you are in the automatic program and you cannot predict the feeling of an experience in your life, you will probably be hesitant to engage it. We need to look at one more aspect of thinking and feeling to get the full picture of what's happening when you keep living in the same state of being. This thinking-feeling loop also produces a measurable electromagnetic field that surrounds our physical bodies. In fact, our bodies are always emitting light, energy, or frequencies that carry a specific message, information, or intention. In the same way, we also receive vital information that is carried on different frequencies. So we are always sending and receiving electromagnetic energy. Here's how that works. When we think a thought, those networks of neurons that fire in our brain create electrical charges. When those thoughts also cause a chemical reaction that results in a feeling or an emotion, as well as when a familiar feeling or emotion is driving our thoughts, those feelings create magnetic charges. They merge with the thoughts that create the electric charges to produce a specific electromagnetic field equal to your state of being. Think of emotions as energy in motion. When someone experiencing a strong emotion walks into a room, their energy, aside from their body language, is often very palpable. We have all felt another person's energy and intent when they were angry or very frustrated. We felt it because they were emitting a strong signal of energy that carried specific information. The same is true of a very sexual person, a person who is suffering, or a person who has a calm, loving energy. All those energies can be sensed and felt. As you might expect, different emotions produce different frequencies. The frequencies of creative, elevated emotions like love, joy, and gratitude are much higher than the emotions of stress, such as fear and anger, because they carry different levels of conscious intent and energy. Emotions are energy in motion. All energy is frequency, and all frequency carries information. Based on our own personal thoughts and feelings, we are always sending and receiving information. So if we are recreating the past day after day, thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same emotions, we are broadcasting the same electromagnetic field over and over again, sending out the same energy with the same message. From the perspective of energy and information, this means the same energy of our past continues to carry the same information, which then keeps creating the same future. Our energy then is essentially equal to our past. The only way we can change our lives is to change our energy, to change the electromagnetic field we are constantly broadcasting. In other words, to change our state of being, we have to change how we think and how we feel. If where you place your attention is where you place your energy, the moment you put your attention on familiar feelings and memories, you are siphoning your energy into the past and out of the present moment. In the same way, if your attention is constantly on all the people you have to see, the places you have to go, the things you have to do at certain times in your known familiar reality, then you are siphoning your energy out of the present moment and into the predictable future. If where you place your attention is where you place your energy, then the moment you place your attention on a familiar emotion, your attention and your energy are in the past. If those familiar emotions are connected to a memory of some past event involving a person or an object at a particular place and time, then your attention and your energy are in the past as well. As a consequence, you are siphoning your energy out of the present moment into your past. By the same means, if you start to think about all the people you have to see, the things you have to do, and the places you have to go at certain times in your routine day, you are siphoning your attention and energy into a predictable known future. All of your energy is now completely commingled with those known experiences in that specific line of time. Your energy is creating more of the same, and your body is going to follow your mind to the same events in your same reality. Your energy is being directed out of the present moment and into the past and the future. As a result, you have very little energy left to create an unknown experience in a new timeline. So, as you start your day, when you have the thought of the toilet, the next thing you know, there you are walking toward the toilet. Then you have the thought of the shower, and you find yourself in the shower adjusting the water temperature. You have the thought of the coffee maker, and you're projecting your attention and energy to the coffee maker. And as you automatically walk to the kitchen to make your morning cup of java, once again, your body is following your mind. And if you've done that for the last 22 years, your body is going to effortlessly coast right over there. Your body is always following your mind. But in this case, it's been repeatedly following your mind to the known. That's because that's where your attention and therefore your energy is. So now let me ask you this. Could it ever be possible for your body to start following your mind to the unknown? If so, you can see that you would have to change where you put your attention, and that would lead to changing your energy, which would require you to change how you think and how you feel long enough for something new to happen. While it may sound incredible, this is indeed possible. It makes sense that just as your body has been following your mind to every known experience in your life, like the coffee maker each morning, if you were to start investing your attention and energy into the unknown, your body would then be able to follow your mind into the unknown, a new experience in your future. I always tell my children that your personality creates your personal reality. And if you want to change something in your life, then on a fundamental level, you have to look at the thoughts you're thinking to see if they're serving you. Notice the behaviors that you're demonstrating and see if those are loving to yourself. And begin to look at the emotions that you've memorized that become part of your identity. And children begin to understand this very naturally, because the law with children that I've believed from the time my children were very young is that if you give them the facts, they will interpret the laws. So because of mirror neurons, your children are paying attention to more of what you do than what you say. So you can't say to your kids, clean your room, and have a messy room. You understand? Because they're going to look at your room subconsciously, automatically. And I was doing an interview for this book. Someone was interviewing me for this book, and they said, "Can you tell me about the terrible twos?" I said, "It's really simple. What do you do the first year of your child's life? Oh, look how cute he is. Look how cute she is. Look. Oh, and then all of a sudden, at 1 year old, what happens? They stand up, right? And they stand up and their brain is so neuroplastic and they go, wow, look at this vase. I wonder how it's made. Oh, it holds water. And then the child begins to interact with the environment out of curiosity, pulling things, breaking things, and then what do? No! No! And you do that for a whole year, and then you say at 2 years old, put your shoes on, and what's the child say? No! It's mirror neurons. It's only mirroring behavior. So we know then that children pay attention because of those mirror neurons more based on what they observe than what they're told.
We've all probably caught ourselves at one time or another doing or saying something and then realizing I'm starting to act just like my father. I don't know about you, but this realization scared the heck out of me. What are the chances that you will ultimately behave and act just like your parents? This is a legitimate, important question. If conscious awareness only activates our genetically pre-patterned neural network of synaptic connections, we probably will think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, and act just like our parents at different points in our life. Those inherited synaptic circuits will become so strongly wired by their repetitive firing that we'll be naturally predisposed by our genetic propensities to be of the same mind as our mother and father. Whether we have inherited the wiring for anger, victimization, or insecurity from the genetic code of our lineage, because our parents have remembered, practiced, and mastered those circuits to produce the same repeatable experiences. If these cells continue to fire together, then they will develop stronger and more intricately refined synaptic connections. Our consciousness tends to live in the part of the brain where those familiar circuits hold the reins. People often operate as if they have only one option for behavior. We've all heard folks say, hey, that's just me. That's just who I am. More correctly, given what we know about the role genetics plays, they should say, hey, this is just me choosing to activate the circuits I have inherited from my mother and father. Because my brain possesses neuroplastic qualities, I've developed some of my own neural nets. But for now, I'm choosing to go with what has been present from the beginning. That's just who I am. After studying this phenomenon, I began to realize that, theoretically, if we don't make any new synaptic connections in our life, we can rely only on our inherited synaptic connections, and that leads to a mind expressing only our genetic predispositions. How can we add instead to what we are given? How can we add to the trillions of possible combinations, sequences, and patterns of synaptic connections to upgrade the hardware of our brain? Mathematically, based on potential combinations and permutations, if we just add a few synaptic connections to the existing matrix, we will add many new possible directions in which our brain can fire in novel, sophisticated sequences and patterns. Our genetic inheritance is not the end-all, but only the initial deposit of our neurological capital. In order to evolve ourselves and our species, we must be able to add to and modify what we were initially given. Our ability to express a greater sense of self results from adding our own synaptic connections in response to our environment and utilizing our brain's plasticity. Both play a crucial role in helping us form these connections.
I think anybody who is alive right now, who is engaged in life, has noticed a quickening taking place. In other words, everybody feels like more things are happening in a shorter amount of time. So there's an acceleration, and time is a construct in our mind. There's no circuitry, there's no hardware in our brain to be able to understand time. It's a construct based on our past and how we predict the future. But information is so readily available in our world right now that in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. So you don't need an authority to gain information any longer. You don't need a priest. You don't need a governor. You don't need a doctor. You don't need a teacher. You can access information at your fingertips. So then as you begin to discern the information with discernment, the proper and right information, you begin to develop some type of empowerment, because all of a sudden you're seeing possibilities that you never saw before without that information. So you wake up, you become more aware. So the knowledge creates awareness, awareness creates consciousness, consciousness and energy are connected. So there's a change in energy globally going on with the world. Now that knowledge and that change of energy has effects on paradigms that are no longer a vibrational match with that new level of consciousness. So you see a political systems unraveling. You see economic systems unraveling. They're unspiraling, they're unraveling. They can't sustain themselves with this new energy. You see journalism, the environment, education, religion, medicine, it's all unraveling because something greater has to come as a result of a change in consciousness. Now, no victims here, because when you and I negotiated from a soul level to be here at this time, this is the time we've been waiting for. This is where it's happening in the Milky Way. It's happening here because there's a true coming of a new consciousness. It's not one person that's coming. It's a group, it's a collective consciousness that's emerging. And emergence is one mind, one heart. And the way you control people is you give them misinformation based on emotions. You control people by controlling their emotions. And media and television and advertisement is a great seduction, that people can watch the news and get really angry, then change the channel and watch a football game and get very excited, then change the channel and watch a sitcom and laugh, and change the channel and watch a drama, and you can change your emotional state because of technology. So then it means then most people are relying consciously or subconsciously on things outside of them to make them feel a certain way. And so my interest is to provide the proper content of information scientifically to people so that they reason that this is actually possible. Then to give them the opportunity to experience that philosophy and get their behaviors to match their intentions, as many ways as I can. Now, if I do that properly, people are going to have new experiences. The experiences are going to change the circuitry in their brain. Learning makes connections, but experience enriches connections. The end product of an experience is an emotion. So when you start feeling worthy, when you start feeling a love for yourself, when you start feeling a love for life, when you start feeling truly grateful, the moment you feel that emotion, you're teaching your body to understand what your mind has understood.
If we choose to rely solely on our inherited circuits, we develop the habit of being our genetics. What is the alternative? There are two ways we make new synaptic connections in the brain. The first is to learn new things. The second way is to have new experiences. Every time we learn new knowledge or information, the brain changes. When we embrace a novel experience, the brain also records it as a new pattern of neurological circuits. Therefore, if we seldom learn new things and have hardly any novel experiences throughout our lifetime, the fewer the synaptic connections we will make. For the most part, our conscious awareness will be limited to using those initial neural networks from our genetic lineage with which to produce the mind.
According to Hebb's model, when we fire the same genetically inherited circuits over and over again, then we wire ourselves to live out only our predetermined genetic destiny. Put another way, if we repeat the same familiar, predictable routine and automatic actions, thoughts, habits, and behaviors, our brain will remain at status quo. And if we accept the fire together, wire together theorem, then it will only make sense that those connections will become more hardwired by the repeated activation of the same neural nets. We will not evolve our brain to any large degree. The way out, in order to escape our genetic propensities, is to continually learn new information and have new experiences. Typically, when we have acquired new knowledge, we say, I learned something new today. What do we really mean when we say we know or have learned something? Generally, this means that we have been exposed to factual data, have committed that information to memory, and can recall it when necessary or when asked. What this means neurologically is that we have organized a series of synaptic circuits into a neural network, which stores that concept. The mere process of learning a new idea and storing that fact as a memory in the brain leaves a mark of that thought in our living neurological tissue.
And wouldn't you agree then, if you were changing a habit, whether you wanted to lose weight or stop smoking or stop eating chocolate, whatever people do, you're going to have to look at the things that cause you to return back to the same choice. And you're going to review in your mind, oh my gosh, I know that little devil's going to come up and say, go ahead, start tomorrow. Chocolate's good for you. It's all right. Everybody else is eating it, And you have to become selective about that thought's going to come up, and you have to overcome that thought. Would you agree? Because that thought's going to lead to the same choice, right? So you have to review in your mind who you no longer want to be. And then you're going to have to observe your behaviors. And as you begin to observe your behaviors, you're going to have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional addiction or memory in your body. And your body responds to a new mind. It gets a rush of energy. And when it gets that rush of energy, you're giving it a sampling of the future. You're grabbing the reins of the stallion, and you're pulling those reins in, and you're saying, I'm the boss. And the body, the animal, begins to respond to your mind. And then you have to look at the emotions, the feelings that you look forward to, whether it's guilt or shame or unworthiness, that's become so familiar, you don't even know that you're feeling that way. It just feels like you. And you have to decide then, does this emotion belong in my future? Do I want to bring this into my future? Because as long as I'm living by this emotion, I'm living in my past. So then as you begin to observe those states of mind and body, you begin to objectify your subjective self. And just like viewing a videotape of yourself, playing baseball, playing tennis, dancing a dance, speaking publicly, whatever it is, if you can observe yourself, it means you can self-correct better. Wouldn't you agree? So then the process of change then is becoming conscious of your unconscious self. And when you begin to decide every day who you no longer want to be, you are retiring the old self. And the body will crave the emotional payoff just like an addiction. And you have to understand that that's the biological, neurological, chemical, hormonal, physiological, genetic death of the old self. And when you begin to understand that, you can work then in creating a new self. And you can begin to emotionally give your body a taste of the future ahead of the actual event. And as we said last night, the emotional signature is exactly what signals the gene. Because the body does not know the difference between the actual experience in your life that creates the emotion and the emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone. To the body, it's the same.